Donald Trump at a recent rally mused about banning the entry of Marxists and communists into the country, invoking seemingly a 1954 act, which he claims restricted communists and Marxists from entering the country, but actually did not. Here he is on stage talking about the need to keep Marxists and communists out and ask the question, what are we going to do with those who are already here? And socialist, yes, indeed.
A new plan made them competitive. Today, I'm announcing a new plan to protect the integrity of our immigration system. Federal law prohibits the entry of communists and totalitarians into the United States.
Does it? I mean, communists, totalitarians, I consider.
But my question is, what do we do with the ones that are already here that grew up in it? I think we have to pass a new law for them. Using federal law in section 212F of the Immigration
I'd be very shocked if that's accurate. That sounds like you made that up.
Deny entry to all
I don't think you forgot.
Marxists. Those who come to and join our country must love our country. We want them to love our country. We don't want them when they want to destroy our country. Welcome to America. We want to destroy your country. Thank you very much. So we're going to keep foreign, Christian-hating communists, Marxists, and socialists out of America. We're keeping them out of America.
He's playing the classics.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, yeah, it became personal.
Has he not gone to Latin America at all? I'm about to go less than 3 weeks. I'm going to be in Nicaragua, partying with Sandinistas.
I've been to Nicaragua.
Yeah, I'm going to be. I'm going to be hanging.
It was nice.
I loved it. It was the first country I went to.
Grenada.
Grenada. Okay. I went to Managua, and then I went to Billy on the Caribbean coast. They flew us over in little Cessnas. That was scary, but it was the first stamp on my passport. You know what I'm saying? I got my passport less than 2.5 years ago, and I'm going back because there's a celebration. It's the reunion of the revolution when the Sandinistas kicked back the Contras, the CIA-funded war. You know that ties into the crack pandemic. Is it crack pandemic or epidemic? I don't know which one it is, but the crack explosion in the United States, you know what I'm saying? Freeway Rick Ross and the Iran-Contra and Reagan and the whole 9 yards, you know. But the first time I went down there, guys, and I want to know what Trump's going to do. If they got a Catholic Marxist at the border, is he going to let them in? Because he said, godless cat, can it be a Catholic Mark? Because most of those people in Nicaragua, they are of Marxist ideology when it comes to their economics. They don't have the culture war bullshit down there.
One of the things I heard you talk about this, I don't know if it was on your show. You've been making the rounds. By the way, this is Pasta's third show of the day. He started the day on Hard Lens Media with our friend Kit, and then you did Trailer Park Pundit. Now you're here. So you're really putting in the work today, making the rounds. But I heard you say something to the effect of this is Trump picking the low-hanging fruit. And I thought that was an interesting way of putting it, because one of the things we've always said on this show is that we don't think Trump ever really understood his sort of cross-partisan appeal the way, say, like Steve Bannon did. Like Steve Bannon is an actual like right-wing populist who understood that Trump could actually make inroads with some of the Bernie Sanders primary voters and pull in some of the left-wingers and some of the more apolitical working class people. And he was sort of aware of that appeal philosophically in a way that Trump never really seemed to be. And this just seems to be playing to the base. So do you want to speak to that a bit?
Well, it's like my mother said, the masses are asses, and that's who I'm going with that comment. I mean, he's just, you know, right. When I say the low-hanging fruit, that's what I mean. The very uneducated, the people who want to blame everything on China and communism. You know, the other day I was in New York, and a friend of mine was like, China owns 80% of our wheat. I'm like, no, that's not true. You know, you should really look under BlackRock and see what's going on and see who's controlling things. But that's what it is. And this
think
war,
that's Monsanto. They meant Monsanto.
This war that we're experiencing, this culture war, a lot of it is what I try to explain to people, especially my conservative populist right people, is that they shouldn't buy into the communist thing, because it's not about like really communism. It's just communism versus anti-communism, right? And then on the left, you have these people who call everybody on the right capitalist, and it's just another divisive way of pitting the people against each other rather than looking up. Most of the cappuccino communists in America, they're not like full-blown, Leninist, Trotskyites or whatnot. Very few of them really get into that. What they're for is for labor rights. That's what they want. They don't want to see the corporations taking over. So they put themselves in kind of this Marxist ideology of sorts. Then, of course, you got the culture war bullshit, which really cultural Marxism doesn't come from them. But that's what the majority of those people who claim to be a socialist and communist, they don't want to see the corporations taking over. And I try to explain to them that those people on the right who call themselves capitalists, they're not like just all like hardcore about capital and they just believe that capitalism is freedom of choice, not being told what to do. So if you really dissect and get into what these two parties are, you can actually get them to come together and speak with one another, unlike what Donald Trump is doing right here. And that's being very divisive. You know what I'm saying? And I get it's the primary time and he's going for that low hanging fruit. But, once you start going down that road, it's hard to walk away from. That's really, really I was very upset with Donald Trump that he went there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no.
Well, you have to remember, Donald Trump's like a gazillion years old. He's playing the classics. Like that's going back to right-wing rhetoric from when he was young. Yeah. Right. It's this very Cold War, the communists and the Marxists. Nobody talks like that anymore on either side. If you saw, I thought it was terrible, but if you saw The Irishman, Scorsese's movie for Netflix, where for some reason, instead of casting young actors, he decided to put these old men through that and CGI them. They had a lot of scenes with the Teamsters. And I'm sure they looked at actual transcripts of things that they said. These guys sound like fucking Marxist-Leninists. Like, you look at the kind of language that they're using about the worker versus the owners, and they said that kind of rhetoric. I think after the 30s became mainstream in American politics for a very long time. And with the Reagan Revolution, it got gradually driven out and then completely buried with the New Democrats. So now we're like 2 generations away from people being fluent in class economics. So that's what that was very striking to me when I watched that, because you listen to these speeches of guys that today you would think of as like MAGA Republicans, right?
Yeah,
we're gonna go down there, right? But they're all talking in these very class-oriented, Marx-inspired language.
I really just thought that, I guess you see, it's kind of funny. Like, we talked about that first clip with Donald Trump talking about the documents and it's being a little bit like, stupid by kind of reading them out aloud, and I should have declassified that. I could have declassified. I mean, you're just like you just incriminated yourself there, pal. And they're going to probably go after him for that no matter what. It's like they do have something right now because he's admitted that they weren't declassified and he was showing. So they'll try to get him to reach some type of deal where he'll have to just drop out and not run if he isn't a Trojan horse, because sometimes I think he is that. But when he's actually reading the substance, and for him to stop and not go to war with Iran, that is huge. You know what I'm saying? So that you always think that these areas where he's not really the anti-war candidate, right? Let's stop that right away. But he is more anti-war than Joe Biden. And one of the things I liked about your last show was when you guys gave me credit for saying, gun to the head, I'm voting for Trump over Biden right away. You know what I'm saying? Because I can just think and answer practically. And sometimes you just hope that we're moving towards that. And sometimes I'm questioning myself, is Trump a wolf in sheep's clothing, or is he really an outsider? And if he's really an outsider and he's trying to make some differences, yeah, he's a little dumb, but he can get smarter, right? And I would think he would find that lane, like that Jimmy Dore lane, to just speak practically across the board to Republicans, Democrats, Team Blue, Team Red, and do so, not be so divisive right there. So it just proved to me.
Well, that's the thing.
I think he has a lot of Nixon's weaknesses without any of his intelligence. That tape reminded me of in Oliver Stone's Nixon. There's a scene where his wife, and I don't know if this actually happened or if it was dramatization, but it was an interesting analysis or theory His wife accuses him of doing those tapes because of a compulsion to show off, right? To show how mean he could be and how in control he is and how nasty he is. It almost seems like Trump has that compulsion, but he's just such a moron, just such an absolute moron that he would go so far as to say these things that just obviously incriminate him. Like, Nixon had good reason to believe that they were never going to come for those tapes. Whereas Donald Trump had no good reason to believe when he's talking to a fucking reporter that these tapes will never be heard. It's just absolutely mind-blowing.
Right. That's a good point, because that signals to me that he doesn't understand his appeal, and he still probably doesn't understand why he is so reviled by Washington. As much as he goes out there and says, yeah, the swamp hates me and they're not coming for me, they're coming for you, I'm just in their way. If you actually had a real understanding of why, then you would be very tight-lipped anytime a red light is blinking in your presence. Anytime that you see you're being recorded, you would not so casually.
Yeah, he's just so at his ease.
I could
bring us a couple of cokes.
But hey, take a look at this. Well, we can't tell this to anybody, right? Don't show that to anybody. Hey, bring a Coke in here, right? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And I think one of the big pieces of evidence for this is what Russell has said in the past, which is if he really understood his appeal, he would not have gotten rid of Steve Bannon. He would not have let his ego get the best of him and kick Steve Bannon to the curb, because Bannon understood that, and he understood that threat. Like a lot of those red pill speeches that Trump gave in the closing days of the 2016 campaign, those were damn good speeches, and those were Bannon speeches. Bannon clearly wrote those, and Trump read them off a prompter. So, like, if you had an understanding of that, you would act accordingly, and he seems incapable of acting accordingly.
Yeah, and not only that, if he had Bannon, he might have actually been effective, because people talk about Trump, I mean, his followers, as if, he didn't take any shit. Actually, he took a lot of shit. He for the most part, as much as he would rhetorically reject Washington and the swamp, most of the time he did what they pressured him to do. Right? He had a very antagonistic policy towards Russia. He might have said some things, but if you look at the actual policy, he was harder on Russia than Obama was. Did he want to be? Clearly not. He felt like, as much as he might have said, the press, the enemy of the people, he was a creature of the tabloids in New York. He very much cared about what the press thought of him, or he wouldn't have made those kinds of decisions. Something we will talk about more on Rumble. Fauci. Yeah. If he really had the courage of his convictions, he would have fired Fauci right at the beginning of the pandemic. He would have fired him immediately. He kept him the whole time. So how independent was he from those expectations? Really?
Please clap.